Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Board of Selectmen meeting from April 13th, 2015. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. We will start the meeting with the review of items for consent. The items under the consent folder are minutes for March 23rd, accounts payable manifest for $39,885.05, payroll manifest for $43,878.44, the reappointment of Keith Buxton and Colleen Gamache to the Recreation Commission, the elderly exemption approval, the veterans exemption denial, intent to cut for map 15 lot 8, intent to cut supplemental for map 15 lot 2, abatement approvals for map 10 lot 57, map 5 lot 171, map 6 lot 86A, abatement denial to Fairpoint, senior project 5K walk run. It's a walk run.
Mm-hmm.
Unity Relay March, easement deeds for Hamel Circle, and release of easement on Pinewood. So if anybody that would like to pull anything from those?
Make a motion to approve the consent as read.
I have
Second.
a motion by Mr. Brunel and second by Mr. Byron. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those approve, all those opposed, all those abstain. Motion carries 3-0-0. Let the record show that Mr. Bork has an excused absence, and Mr. Lemire said he will be here, he just may be a few minutes late. Next thing we have is request for items for other business. Do we have any other business? Hearing none. We will now go to the pipeline discussion. Jason?
We'll start with the first point. Just to clarify at the outset here, I think you all, as well as I, received a letter from Selectman Byron about concern about conflict. So I guess if you want to officially discuss that here, so we have it in the record and.
Go ahead, you were starting the discussion.
I was setting the table for you, but I don't want to put words in your mouth, so.
So, because I was doing my income taxes several weekends ago, found that I'm a stockholder in the company that is looking to install the gas line. I feel that it is best to recuse myself from further discussions of this matter in front of the board. So, with that, I will step down off the board for this discussion.
Well, I would like you to not step down yet,
Okay?
because as we've discussed, when you brought that to light, it made me look like John and I both have
Yeah, mine too.
the same holding company in 401k folders. Granted, it's not
It's a bond instead of.
it's not a stock purchase, it's not a stock holding, it's just that we can't even have this discussion if you leave.
Sorry, that's not my concern. My concern is that I have a conflict of interest. It's not that I have a mutual fund, I have direct stock ownership.
Okay? Well,
What's a,
Well, it's okay. Let's continue on then.
okay.
We may slightly, depending on your attendance here, you may slightly change tack, or you may concur with a different approach.
Well, here's the question I have for you.
Yep.
Unfortunately, we have people in the room that are probably here for a pipeline discussion. Is this a discussion we continue with until Mr. Lemire arrives? Because essentially, he
Yeah.
won't be involved in it, and he won't be able to make any
No,
motions.
I think we continue the discussion. There's plenty of information here. These
Yep.
people are here. I think, plenty of people have been waiting for a while. We have not, as a group, met since the presentation. So, I think it would be helpful for us to kind of inject some more comment into the conversation. That is why I've have a letter base that I think makes sense for us to move to, that may actually be helpful before we go into the public the comment section, so the people that are here can understand kind of where our heads are going on this at this point.
We might as well present the letter. We can't approve it, but.
Okay.
Right. Right. Well, and I guess, yeah, I mean, we can either do it. The other thing is, if we feel ultimately the time is of the essence, it is a letter that I can send out as your town administrator.
Yep.
So, probably the best thing is, why don't I just read through this letter so everybody sort of has the benefit of hearing what it is that we're doing. This is a letter to the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. Assuming it's coming from the Selectmen. Dear Secretary Bose, as the elected body, a governing body, we wish to share concerns about Kinder Morgan's Northeast Energy Direct project proposed to pass through our community. The New Hampshire portion of this route includes approximately 2.68 miles in Litchfield with an estimated impact of 67 landowners. 1, the current route passes through a residential neighborhood with cul-de-sacs at each end, leaving a single point of access and egress in case of any hazard during either construction or operation. More troubling, the proposed right-of-way area severely impacts 13 residential properties along Wren Street and Mockingbird Lane. The current utility easement for Eversource bisects these lots, which are approximately an acre each. Further disruption with the necessary setbacks for the pipeline from the existing electrical service appears to severely hamper the use and enjoyment of these properties. Additionally, with such a major disruption to the use and enjoyment of these properties, we are concerned about the detrimental impact on resale value, which not only directly impacts these residents, but also the town generally through the loss of tax base. 2, currently, there are 5 major pipeline projects proposed for New England that have the potential to carry 4.5 billion cubic feet of gas per day, which appears to be more than 4 times the amount that any independent study has identified as necessary to meet the region's future need. Clearly, it is not feasible from an economic perspective for all of these projects to proceed simultaneously. In this light, the Kinder Morgan project seems excessive, and the actual need relative to other activities in the market has not been adequately demonstrated to justify the disruption to our community. We are further concerned about the long-run viability of the Kinder Morgan project if market conditions do not warrant its continued operation after installation in Litchfield. Our residents may endure the disruption for no long-term community or regional benefit. 3, the routing of the so-called power line alternative through New Hampshire appears to be an action of perceived regulatory convenience. The pipeline enters Massachusetts and ends in Massachusetts, but has an unnecessary diversion into New Hampshire. No new distribution facilities have been proposed for New Hampshire, and no new electricity generators have been sited or approved in New Hampshire. Moreover, the major electric distribution and generation company in the state, and the company that services Litchfield, Eversource Energy, has committed as a co-developer of the competing Spectra Energy Access Northeast project. Again, we do not see why our community should endure the disruption by the speculative Kinder Morgan project. Number 4, no meaningful commitment has been made to expand residential and commercial natural gas service as a result of this pipeline. While our local provider, Liberty Utilities, has committed to use a small portion of the massive capacity of the Kinder Morgan project, their actual agreement does not appear to represent any expansion of capacity in our community. Small portions of Litchfield have natural gas service from Liberty Utilities, and others have sought our board's assistance to expand that service. However, Liberty's lack of commitment on this, tied to the new capacity of this proposed pipeline, does not demonstrate any benefit of the Kinder Morgan pipeline to Litchfield. Further, we have heard testimony at a recent hearing that we hosted that a major commercial industrial user in town has had requests from Liberty to reduce usage during peak demand periods. Yet, no specific guarantee has been made that the enhanced regional capacity proposed by the Kinder Morgan pipeline will address this business disruption. This project has generated a significant amount of interest and concern in our community. We urge careful consideration of these issues and further request that one of the required scoping meetings be held in Litchfield so our residents' concerns can be heard directly. my recommendation is, once you come to a conclusion on whether it's this letter or some modified version thereof, we send it to FERC and ensure we're also copying our congressional delegation as well as the governor.
Jason, you posted this last week. Did you get any feedback from any other members of the board?
No additional feedback, no. You know, it reflects conversations I've had with all of you over the past couple of weeks, but I think once I put it into words.
To me, it's perfect the way it's written.
Will you make comments at all on it, or not?
Well, our public input doesn't start till 6:30, but furthermore, Jason, where do we go from here? We've discussed the letter.
Mm-hmm.
It addressed we're gonna address the town-owned parcels.
In terms of, what I had, the other items I have for discussion are some discussion about the assessed value, the town-owned parcels, and comments from the fire chief.
I mean, we can't do anything.
Well, but I'm wondering if we even can continue the meeting because we're not quorumed.
Well,
I know. You can continue the
Well,
meeting
we
because
can
you
continue
started in
listening,
quorum,
right.
but you
Right.
can't make any official
you
action.
can't make any, you can't make any official decisions, so.
Would it be helpful with your letter, Jason, to have, shouldn't you have a conservation report, commission report somehow linked to this? I mean, Robert Leary's son and daughter and son-in-law built a house down there, and the Conservation Commission had them jumping through hoops, meeting after meeting, to move it away from the brook 10 feet. And there's a little pool over here. And then you're gonna dig a pipeline, right, the brook crosses it, and this and that and the other. Why are they being so silent?
I think they're looking, they're continuing to look at what the other issues they have are. The challenge is that a lot of the conservation issues, a lot of the preservation issues are all sort of go through the federal, there's a section 216 formal federal review.
Yeah.
So, we know at some point, for better or worse, the federal review triggers all of those things. The state site evaluation committee triggers those things. So,
At
yeah.
some point, they're going to ask for a report.
At some point they are looking for that information right now. What we've done as a region has pulled the data that we have regionally through NRPC and sent them that way rather than reinventing the wheel all of those ways. In fact, I got a draft earlier today from our rep on the NRPC committee of notable sites that are flagged in the state database that I need to proof and review. And
Then the other thing, should you perhaps have a section in your letter noting that, I noticed that you noticed that there was, noted that there was no egress from certain cul-de-sacs, but there's no egress from McKelvin Drive either. And that's probably within the blast zone, and you have a school on that street. You know, the proximity to all the schools in the town, I think, is something that you should know.
Right, the middle school?
Yeah?
Because how do we evacuate all three schools at once? I don't understand how that's not a concern.
I mean, they're all so close to that
We're
part
screwed at
of
this
town.
Did they ever say what the blast radius would be? Have they ever admitted
We
it?
can't do anything.
It's 1,000 feet. We were told that in Hudson.
Frank,
Can I suggest that the board tables this until 6:30 when public comment can be held? And then at that
Start
point in
with
time.
I tried that 5 minutes ago,
And
but
then at that point in time, Mr. Lemire most likely will be here. I can step off the board and then you can take public comment, discuss this, do whatever you gotta do, and make a decision and go forward.
ultimately, that's what we're gonna have to do, because by labeling a time for public input,
Okay, fine,
we aren't supposed to even hear public input.
okay.
But at least the people have had a chance now to hear what Jason has put together as a response. And they can consider that in the next
Right.
15 minutes.
All right, so I'm gonna make a motion to table this until at least 6:30. I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second. I don't think.
well, yeah,
do it.
sorry, you
You're just
can't,
gonna
you
table it.
can't act anyway, so I'll just barrel on to the next thing.
Sounds good. Frank, you wanna come on back?
Well,
I'm not gonna talk about the pipeline right now.
do you want to talk about any more of the pipeline? I have additional information outside the letter that we probably. So, sorry, Frank, you made it most of the way back, but Most of these don't really require any action, but I did want to give you kind of the snapshot of some of these other things.
Sure.
The first one is, there was a request at last meeting to talk to our assessors about potential assessed value changes. The note I got back from Avatar was that Gary, who's their utility assessor, is working on a report for Merrimack to get a sense of overall impact, any loss in value to abutting properties, and overall increase in value due to pipeline. Probably won't be ready to June 1. I know he's been quoting a value about 1.5 per mile of pipeline. This is a rough ballpark. Things like pump stations, et cetera, affect that value. DRA numbers will in no way be used. That's notable because right now, the estimates that Kinder Morgan has provided to us in their initial flyers and when they provided that public meeting were based on the Department of Revenue Administration's approach to utility assessing, which skews lower than local values everywhere. It also continues to be one of the reasons why most utilities will eventually sue their towns that host them eventually. So I want to let you know the report's coming. Lauren said expect it beginning of June. I did share an article from New Ipswich that they had their staff assessor look at tax revenue, and their estimate was they would expect it would be significantly lower than suggested by the Lines developer. They put the depreciation factor into the calculation. So, again, I mean, I think I've said several times when we've looked at these numbers that whether it's pro or con, we're not going to see a windfall one way or the other out of this. So, if it were me, the set of reasons to consider this is probably not the strongest reason to consider. I mean, here you see a mixed message. Other question we had was from was any specific concerns the fire chief may have. So I can, fire chief has shared some comments with me and said that I can share them here. He said, I was in attendance for the information session last month, and it's clearly obvious the pipeline has generated a significant amount of concern at all levels. However, there is no question that there is a need to find adequate means to provide sources of energy to meet current future demands for our society. Without any type of plan or formal design, it's hard to evaluate specific risks and/or offer concise response concerns. In a general context, the Litchfield Fire Department would respond to an incident similar to most other incidents by evaluating the risk and developing a plan of action that provides for the safety of residents, firefighters, while mitigating the hazard. Should the pipeline be installed, as Kinder Morgan indicated in the information session, local fire departments would receive training relative to responding to an incident involving the pipeline. Further, given that this pipeline would affect multiple communities, I would expect there would be other opportunities statewide for training as well. In fact, there is a new program just being offered on pipeline safety through State Fire Marshal's Office, New Hampshire Association of Fire Chiefs. There's no question if the project does proceed, there will be some impact on the fire department. However, I don't anticipate it being overburdening. Assuming that there are no above-ground valves or appliances, risk of leakage would most likely only come from accident involving excavation around the pipe. Happy to field any questions the board might have. And he and I in conversation had discussed too, I mean, both of us at previous times in our careers have served in places that have had transmission pipelines with no notable burden impact in the community. In his case in Hooksett, in my case in Plastow. So... they'll add it to the training that they do. I mean, what you may or may not realize now is that the other major risks the other major hazards that we face here, fire department trains regionally on a regular basis anyway. The risk posed by Manchester Airport, they do regular training there, and the risks with the chemical company and the railroad across the river, because the wind blows back this way. So those are all part of our regular training and preparedness now. So this would be one more component of that. Town-owned parcels. There are 2 parcels owned by the town that are part of at least the initial pipeline plan. Map 10, Lot 60, Map 14, Lot 125. The second one, that map 14, lot 125 one, is on the edge of town, with the border with Londonderry. Looking at the actual deeds for those parcels, that lot abutting Londonderry has some interesting constraints on it as conservation land, restricting the use of that land. So what I read through and it at least raised a red flag on me as to whether or not survey access could be allowed, what other action could be allowed on there, and who could make that decision. There are no restrictions on the other parcels, so it appears that decision can purely be the board's. Comment I got back from council was that that any development on that other parcel would require permission of the Conservation Commission. But she reads it more narrowly that the restrictions on the property would prohibit any grading, dredging, or filling. And the access, she also sees access restrictions on that lot. And one of the conditions in the deed is that it can only be by town officials for official town business. And first, she further notes that I believe it is the Board of Selectmen who would grant access, but I do not believe doing so would be acceptable under the terms of the easement. So, her comment for caution there is that I think the only way Kinder Morgan gets on that property is to begin a condemnation action, which automatically gives them access. Yeah, they will, if FERC grants there's a status for this that if FERC gives them a certain need status, hold on, let me pull up what it's called. I'm drawing a blank here. If FERC gives it a certificate of public convenience and necessity, that triggers greater authority by Kinder Morgan to be able to access property, both public and private.
Okay, so I was gonna ask you, if we don't give access, FERC can give it against it.
FERC can't give it outright, but FERC sort of lowers the burden of proof to get through the door.
It seems like everywhere we turn, there's,
Nothing we can do.
yeah.
It feels like that. I mean, I don't know.
So those are the updates you had asked about assessed value. We wanted to know about our parcels. Wanted to know about.
Steve, I think the only thing we can do is what we're doing, right? Is getting the sentiment out to FERC, to our legislators, to the government, the governor's office and above. But you're right. It seems like every door we open up, it's slammed right in. There's not much we can do to stop it.
I've had no less than 5 conversations about this with Jason, about different ways of what can be done, and if this is an obstacle, if that is an obstacle. It seems like every time that question gets asked, it seems to be, yeah, no.
Well, and honestly, I mean, I think you'll look. I have shared a lot more information with you that it's not my intention to go through here, but I think this notion of where is the federal review makes sense and not make sense, and where are you bound in? We started, when you dipped our toe into public comment, some of the questions were, why didn't you cover this? Why didn't you cover that? Aren't these issues as well? My sense from looking at all of this and talking to some of my colleagues is, if this project ultimately doesn't go forward, it doesn't go forward because FERC doesn't see the need for this project, whether it's capacity or whether it's location in New Hampshire. So if you feel like I left stuff out of my letter that might be your concern, I did. Because what I wanted to do from this perspective was have sort of the tightest letter I could have about why I thought and why we would think that FERC shouldn't approve it. It's not to discount everybody else's concerns. They're all perfectly valid concerns. I know you're all making them. But my sense is that if this doesn't go anywhere, if it's because FERC doesn't open the door. Because as we've talked about, once FERC opens the door, it's an uphill battle. So, That is why our approach is a little bit narrower. I have shared some information with you when residents have sent information in and asked that it be shared with the board. I've posted all of those for you to read. Our website continues to get activity. I put information up as it comes through that seems to be sort of generally factual, big picture stuff. We're hosting a mailing list for people to sort of self-enroll, and that's been more active with a variety of information. So it's kind of a good snapshot for me to gauge what else is out there, to extract some of it for our own use and for passing along. That's what I know at this point. You'll see there's on the information list, there's a summary, I guess was good as of the end of March as to what all of the other towns in the region have been doing. We continue to update amongst ourselves regularly. We are getting very good information through NRPC. They're meeting, I think, weekly.
Bi-weekly.
Bi-weekly? Yep. So, and, you call Tom's our representative to that, so Tom and I check in regularly too, so I can get the other information that they may have.
So, is there a legal course to take?
Is there a legal course to take?
That was gonna be, and I'll ask my question as well, just so that it gets out in public, okay? Because it actually piggybacks that. If we were gonna join one of the groups like Merrimack or somebody else, try to go legal like they are, join the pool, it would cost X approximately.
Mhm.
And if we were going to do it on our own, it would cost X approximately.
Sure. If you look under the section that I have that's pipeline information, so not really my targeted discussion for tonight, you'll see two things. You'll see something called draft scope of work, group legal. The Word document there is the best that we have come up with, sort of as the coalition of municipalities so far, about role of how we might engage council. And it goes in a couple areas. Public Utilities Commission, FERC Site Evaluation Committee, the New Hampshire Site Evaluation Committee, and sort of what recommendations they may have about how broad or narrow that is. I think amongst ourselves and looking at the process, we, at least some of us in the group feel that one of those regulatory agencies is more meaningful in focusing your attention on than the others, and that's FERC. So we've started to look at that, and we're all kind of struggling with what makes the most sense for all of us there and what the cost is. Some towns have raised a little bit of money. Some of us have raised no money. The best we're looking at is if we hired our own counsel, if you hire somebody with specialty in more specialty in utility affairs, you're looking at $200, $250 an hour. So you can do the math yourself. If 10 of us share that attorney, that drops to $25 an hour. The order of magnitude, though, of how many hours is the question. And that's all kind of what we, as a group, haven't figured out our best recommendation yet, because none of us are rolling in lots of money for this. None of us planned on this. And you can burn a lot of money quickly chasing a lot of things on it. So we're getting a couple proposals back as the coalition group to review what we may hear back from. I think so far we have two firms that have responded. We're expecting another one, and then we'll see if we have anything that makes sense to bring back to the group.
Do we know what the state's position is on this? I've seen some posts that indicate one way versus another, but do we know exactly where the governor sits and where the state house?
As near as I can tell right now, the state's position is to allow continued conversation and review about it. There is no outright pro or con at this point. There has been a commitment on the state's behalf for several years now to find different approaches and sources for energy. And so there's kind of this regional approach trying to do something, so it makes you feel as if that implicitly there is support for this,
Yeah.
but it hasn't been outright. It's kind of the same thing that,
I can see I can see the need to bring more volume into the state, or at least the region. But I still, even with the public hearing we had the other day, I don't see the benefit to Southern New Hampshire in general. Because, we reach out to Liberty, they have no commitments, you wrote it in your letter, there's no distributor committing to expand their system to benefit the community as a whole, so I guess, what's the point?
yeah, that's where the challenge
And I mean, I appreciate the letter, I think the letter, like you said, it's narrow, it really highlights the things like, why'd you leave Massachusetts and go back into Massachusetts, basically using it as transport with no benefit to the area. I don't know.
Just to fill you in, we've been discussing the pipeline. We went through Jason's letter and some of the other informational stuff that he had posted on the site. Have you had a chance to go through most of that?
Some of it, yes.
Okay. And basically, because Frank has stepped down, okay, we ran into the issue of there was only two of us here, so there wasn't a lot we could do. So we continued to give out more of the information Jason was going through. Jason did a great job of filling up the 15 minutes or so that we needed to.
Well, I hope it was informational to everybody who's listening in, for the folks in the end, so.
My apologies for being late.
And Jason, just, the letter that you wrote isn't Jason's letter. It's definitely Jason's concepts of taking all the details we've had. We've talked about this since this whole thing started, and how do we get around this, and how do we understand the community and feedback to FERC and all that, and I think that's the outcome. Ultimately, we just need to approve the letter and move it forward,
Exactly.
or modify it, and that's why I asked the question, has anybody given you any modifications? And if not, to me, I understand the feedback I heard from the community about, what about this, what about that? To your point, it's narrow for the reason so that it hits narrow. I think the community needs to send the FERC letters also. I think individuals need to send those same letters up to the same people we're writing it to, and stack on top of what we're writing. If we're gonna get anybody to step up to help us,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. I mean, that's why, where's the state's position in this? If they're welcoming it, how do we stop the state from letting it happen? And if the federal government comes in and says, we'll take your land, we're, I don't know what to do.
So my question to the board right now is, do we want to make an action on approving this letter right now? Do we want to open up the floor for public comment first?
I think we can listen to the community first, and then especially if there's anything we didn't think about. I know we explained our reason why it's narrow and what it
Yep.
identifies, but there may be some information we haven't heard yet.
I just want to make sure we're all on the same
Yeah, I
page
think so.
before we move forward, that's
Yeah.
all.
Community input.
Excellent. So at this time, my clock says 6:35. We're going to move to public input. So some of the rules I'm going to state about public input are going to be, please come up to the table, state your name, state where you live, and just tell us what your concerns are and get to the point, okay? We don't need Susie down the street told me I should say, or, okay,
No hearsay.
let's move forward in that direction, and we will start with this gentleman. Steve, please step up, because you had your hand up first.
Oh, my goodness.
I'm sorry.
Stephen Callowell, 168 Charles Bancroft Highway. And I was just going to say, I think that if you really are going to get anywhere on this, we can't go at this as little community and little community and little community in the state of New Hampshire. You need a Southern New Hampshire pipeline coalition. And whether it's 2 representatives from each town or whatever, that's the only way you're going to get the attention of congressmen, and you're going to get the attention of the Energy Commission and so forth, because they are not going to listen to Litchfield, New Hampshire. And they're going to have a pile of letters that they're going to read through, and that's going to be the end of it. But if you have a coalition that threatens them, possibly politically, if they don't listen, that's a different story. So that's the only thing that I wanted to say that I think you ought to pursue, because even splitting legal expenses beyond that, just for the recognition you're gonna get.
Thank you.
Karen Hodge, 192 Charles Bancroft Highway. I just have a question for Jason. I've read that they want to create an energy corridor that the governor is for. Now, and that would be access along 93 and 89. Are they trying to pass that into a law, and how would this affect the pipeline as such?
I'm not sure that that impacts at all this pipeline. Remember that the kind of conversation we're having here now has been happening in the North Country for the past 3 years on Northern Pass. The notion of bringing hydropower in from Quebec. So I think the interstate corridor conversation comes out of that more than it comes out of
This pipeline?
this. And that's as much as I know so far. I mean, and I will tell you that's not an area that I've seen or spent a lot of time digging into, but being familiar with Northern Pass.
I was just
Yeah.
interested in it.
Hello, Jody Frazier, 190 Charles Bancroft Highway. I live next to my sister. My question is, Jason, who are you sending this letter to exactly?
We have, right now, that letter is addressed to Kimberly Bowes, the Secretary of FERC,
Okay,
with copies to Senator Jean Shaheen, Senator Kelly Ayotte, Representative Ann Custer, and Governor Margaret Hassan.
are you also suggesting that we send copies of our letters to these same people?
It can't hurt. It can't hurt for them to hear from their constituents.
Can you repeat them one more time?
Sure. Senator Jean Shaheen,
Yes.
Senator Kelly Ayotte, Representative Ann Custer, and Governor Margaret Hassan.
Are there addresses on the website?
You've taken my next point that I'll make sure that I give the hard, and again,
I think it'll be good.
Publish that letter in the.
yeah,
If we approve it, and then with all the addresses.
yeah, when we commit to a letter, I'll publish our letter, I'll make
Would
sure
it
the
also make
addresses are there.
sense to send the same letter to our local reps, the state reps and state senators?
Can't hurt.
No, I think they should see it too.
Yes, because you indicated that you've taken some of the points from your residents, but if we individually send our own comments, that would be more for them to read.
It's more of a grassroots effort too. I think that they would see it that way.
And is this letter that you're proposing would be signed by the selectmen?
Yes. Yeah, we'll decide that now, right, or afterwards.
And the other thing that I would just suggest that you add, it's a very good letter, but when you indicated the residential neighborhoods did not have access if there had been a problem, might be the time you also indicate the proximity to the schools regarding the same issue. Because I don't think you indicated anything regarding the schools.
No, I didn't.
You might mention schools. Okay.
Kathleen Follis, 8 Mike Lane. My first question is, so does this mean you as a board are going to take a vote on whether you are for or against the pipeline in Litchfield? Because personally, I think it should have been on the warrant so that you could say, granted, we don't have a say or a vote in this, but this is how our town feels.
Unfortunately, when the warrant was getting put together, we had very little information. So it was too early to have done anything at that point.
But a number of other towns did put it on their warrant, right?
Yes, and send those, and many of those towns that you're looking at are traditional town meeting towns, so they had the luxury of putting things together late February, March, as opposed to us putting it together in January. So that's kind of the filter you have to use when you look at, I think,
We didn't get an answer to even get a meeting scheduled with them until
until after town meeting.
Right.
Till after town meeting, so.
They haven't been very forthright with their information to us,
Well, and I guess
especially early going.
my approach would be any company that's not being forthright, we oppose until they're willing to be forthright.
And we did take a vote of that.
Okay, so is it on the record that the Board of Selectmen is against and not supporting the pipeline?
No,
But the vote we took was, we've taken no stance until.
until we got more information.
So will you be taking a vote tonight?
That wasn't originally planned.
Because I think a letter or any opinion is going to be taken more seriously from an elected committee if you've actually voted on it. So that's my first thing. And from there, I think that all of our elected committees should be taking a stance on this. We've had talk about the Conservation Committee and that they're kind of sitting back or they're directing it through other areas. But again, I think they should be looking at it, finding out if this is good for Litchfield, then voice your opinion and say it. If this isn't good for Litchfield, then voice your opinion and say it. And as our committees submitting letters. I also went to the school board and said the same thing to them. Their elected committee. Look at the facts. If this is good, if they feel this doesn't impact the school and it's safe for the school, then that's fine. That can be their opinion. But if not, if there are concerns that people have, then they should be taking a vote and they should be sending letters. Whether you need to include it from the town side or not, I think your letter is good and it's to the point, and I understand the concept of a narrow viewpoint. I think we need to attack this from every committee that we have. If this isn't good for Litchfield, our planning board, which Russ Blanchett did a great job trying to bring it up, but it kind of got pushed to the side. We are, from the towns that I've read about, we are the most passive town that we've had, and I don't understand why. So I think it's great that you guys are writing a letter and that we're taking a more active stance. I would like to see it across the board. Planning board, conservation committee, school board, you guys take votes, decide if this isn't good for our town, then we fight it. And maybe maybe we're not going to be able to change the course of this. Maybe every door is going to be slammed in our face, Steve. But if we don't at least take a voice, take a stance, and make a point of it, then we don't know. And then we just took it laying down, and we can't complain when it runs through the middle of our town. And we can't complain if something happens. But we have so many, down in Wilmington, I read a couple articles where they rerouted it out of Wilmington because of well water. What percentage of our town has wells? 40, 50, 60? I've seen numbers all in the range. So it's not going into Wilmington for town wells. Well, we all have personal wells. So there's a number of reasons why each of our committees can be involved. There's a number of reasons why each of our committees can highlight this for FERC and say, you may think this is an important project, but it's not important for Litchfield. But if our committees don't take a stance, you can't expect individuals to have much weight if our own elected officials don't. And I agree, I think we should go to our state reps. I think they should be in our governor's ear saying, this is why it's not good for our town. This is why it's not good for our town. You're going to lose an entire town of constituents. All these residents, they're up in arms about it. Come have a meeting and listen to them. Maybe if we put enough pressure on her, she'll get off of our back. She'll get the pipeline out of our backyard. But I think all of our elected officials should be having a position.
Yeah, I mean, we could wait forever though.
Hi, Jennifer Diener, 9 Birch Street. I actually had a question in regards to the letter. In the part where you spoke about the large company where they had to shut down, I was curious to know if it was looked into if they received incentives to shut down. I know that wasn't really mentioned when it was mentioned at the meeting for Kinder Morgan, but I think it would be worth looking into.
As far as our conversation and follow-up conversation, it doesn't sound as if there were incentives. They were simply.
Was it directly asked?
Yeah, it was asked how many times they had been asked to shut down and whether it was an inconvenience.
And whether if they were asked or if they had to?
That they were asked. And I didn't ask the incentive question because it just had not been on my radar screen as an incentive, but.
I would just be curious to know if that were the case or not before you.
My sense was it was not voluntary.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Margaret Parent, 6 Talent Road. I just really had a comment. I would like to thank the Selectmen and Jason for having that information meeting because I think it really let the Selectmen know how the people in Litchfield felt about this. And a lot of the concerns and issues that were brought up and spoken about, I think are reflected in your letter that is very important. I was also very pleased to see a large part of our community, over 300 people, show up and support the rest of the community that was having the pipeline in their backyards, because a lot of times people will say, if it's not in my backyard, they don't have an interest in it. But I think Litchfield, the way it is, and still the agricultural flair and a nice community, that the pipeline would really be a distraction for that. So it was really nice that the selectmen had that meeting. You got to see how we felt. You've written a letter that I think most of us will support, and that the community is behind us. And I just wanted to thank you for having our input.
Thank you.
Thank
very
you.
much.
Is there any further public input? Yes.
Frank Byron, 8 Mallard Court. Also your state representative. Couple things. First off, I know it was stated here tonight that the governor has not taken a position on this. While she's not come outright and said she's for the Kinder Morgan pipeline, I can assure you that a company like Kinder Morgan does not swing a pipeline through New Hampshire without being invited into the state. Secondarily, the governor has said on many occasions, one of which was a meeting of governors, where she had expressed the desire to have a pipeline into New Hampshire. Couple points. Number one, we have been unable to get Kinder Morgan to respond to this board. It has been a struggle. I know Mr. Hoke spent many weeks trying to get them to come into this town after many promises which Kinder Morgan broke. I ended up, as a state representative, going down to the Kinder Morgan meeting in Hudson, New Hampshire, and physically yelling at those people to try and get that meeting scheduled in this town. I was concerned to the point where I was going to get kicked out of there by the police because I was getting so in their face about this. Those people, if they're not willing to work with you, are not going to be good partners. I don't care what the situation is. I have serious doubts and concerns that Kinder Morgan is the type of company that you want to have running a pipeline through this town. Number two, there is a pipeline that's already being planned that runs up the seacoast and connects the maritime provinces for moving gas into the same distribution center in Drake, Massachusetts, as Kinder Morgan's proposing. And it takes gas out of the same gas aquifer, if you wish to call it that, down in Pennsylvania area. That pipeline is going to be run through existing pipeline territory. There have already been significant number of companies that produce electricity in New Hampshire that have signed on as partners to that pipeline. None of these companies are signing on to the Kinder Morgan line. So I have serious questions as to why we need a pipeline like Kinder Morgan coming through town. Or even why we need to have the pipeline in general to do a duplicative effort of running a pipeline to the same distribution center in Drake, Mass. It makes no sense to me. The pipeline that's going to be installed up the seacoast is in fact going to be much bigger than what we currently have. So there's only a limited amount of need for the gas to run these utility companies and to generate the electricity. Kinder Morgan is not going to be tied into any of them. Kinder Morgan's purpose is to try and run gas to feed into homes, to allow companies like Liberty Gas to expand networks in communities like Litchfield. I tried as a selectman to get Liberty to run pipeline up Albuquerque Avenue so that people who wish to have gas could get gas. Liberty had no interest in doing that. So I fail to see why now we need a Kinder Morgan pipeline. It makes no sense to me. Kinder Morgan has promised this town $280,000 in tax revenue. And I will remind the board that companies such as Kinder Morgan and Fairpoint have always fought against any taxation on a public utility. We are now in a lawsuit with Fairpoint. I would hazard a guess that Kinder Morgan may make you a promise of riches of $280,000, which is not that significant an input to the town's tax base. But when it comes push to shove, they'll be the first ones in line at the court, fighting that all the way up and down to the Supreme Court of the state of New Hampshire. I just don't see this as a project that we really need in Litchfield. It makes absolutely no sense to me. My last point, which I'll close on, is the following. As a state representative, I represent the town of Litchfield at the New Hampshire House. And if you want me to do something, this board needs to take a position. Okay? I can't go off and start raising hell, if you want to call it that, at the state level, and then all of a sudden have my legs cut out from me by the Board of Selectmen in town saying, we don't want to take a position, we haven't taken a position, or what have you. So I need a clear-cut decision made by this board as to where you're going to go on this before I can really start to push buttons at the state. I will grant you that my ability to move things at the state level is limited, contrary to popular belief. But at least I can get fellow representatives together and potentially senators to try and do something about this if we can get the support of the municipalities. Other towns have taken positions. I think it's time for Litchfield to do the same. Thank you.
Okay. Is there any further public comment?
I just think now it seems the best that we can do.
Record, please
Oh,
state your name.
Karen Hodge, 192 Charles Bancroft Highway. From the standpoint of the townspeople and what we can do ourselves individually, we can write to FERC and request a scoping meeting for the town of Litchfield. So I think that's our best option right now.
It's the last time I'll ask. Is there any further public comment? Okay. Public comment is now closed. It's 6:54. So now we need to move forward. Any comments from the board at this point?
No.
I'd like to make a motion if we can.
I'm okay with moving forward.
My motion is different than disapproving the FERC letter. So, to the point that was raised by both our state senator, state rep, and the rest of the community, the board does need to take a position. And right now, the letter just doesn't say what position we take. We're just saying that it's the wrong direction. Tell us why. We have reservations. So, I'd make a motion that the board not support the pipeline coming through this community, and that we modify the letter to indicate that towards the end. This board has taken a vote to not support it, and we're requesting the support of the state to help us with it.
I'll second.
So I have a motion and a second. Motion by Mr. Brunel, second by Mr. Lemire. Now we'll have some discussion. Is there discussion to have with this as well? Just wanted to add it to the letter, the way Jason sees fit.
Yeah, I think the letter's fine the way it is. I think, as we heard from feedback, we don't see the value, and so why will we even be wishy-washy whether or not we will like it through the community or not? So, just saying that we don't support it because there is no intrinsic value to the town, and, you know, to the statement that Frank had raised about the capacity and the other pipelines, those are facts I didn't even hear about until now, too. I question why someone has stock in that company, but that's okay. I'm just saying. Apparently. But that, you
Not
know.
throwing anybody under the bus.
No, I wasn't trying to. It's just.
Ask the question. Am I allowed?
Not usually, but.
Instead of saying we don't support it, can you use the word we oppose?
Yeah, if that's the better wording, we can, ultimately, we're opposed of the pipeline at this time, and this,
I'm okay with it.
So,
Would it be possible for Mr. Byron to get back on the board? He's obviously gonna vote against it or oppose it, so there'd be no reason for him not to vote.
He's the one who removed himself.
Exactly.
I'm just
We don't,
suggesting.
I don't have a problem with it. It's,
I personally didn't think there was a
There's
conflict,
in
but,
this room that say no.
and I didn't see the conflict personally, but I get it.
I would suggest no. It's, the board has to make a decision. I have a fiduciary interest in the outcome of this, and just,
oh, that's right, too.
somebody can go back and
Right.
report the issue. I don't have rights on, I mean, I didn't know until my wife.
That's right, I forgot about that.
So you're one of the guys.
You have to recuse yourself from that?
You don't make laws for individual companies or individual, you have to make laws for the state, so I don't see that as a conflict.
All right, so getting back on track. We have a motion. Is there any further comment to go with the motion? The only thing that I'm gonna question is, should we either restate the motion or add to the motion the request of all our town committees?
Well,
I think that should be separate.
I think that should be separate,
Yeah,
but I,
that's a separate issue.
you know,
Mr. Chair.
there are no other elected committees.
That's perfectly fine.
And the thing is, we don't have jurisdiction over any of the other.
We don't, and I think,
Oh,
you
no,
and
no,
there-
we can request
we
it.
can, well, they should come up with
I
their own,
think it should stand alone.
it has to
Our
stand alone.
motion should stand alone.
Right.
Okay.
We can't, we appoint them, but we can't influence their decisions. I know the planning board's had discussions, I think it's off to the side. Conservation certainly has concerns because of all the water aquifers and all that, and there's been some discussions, I think they've been waiting to see what NRPC comes out with their report, what our actions are, and I think after we make a statement, I think they will do something similar too. And we can certainly bring our rep to the Conservation Commission, should bring back our message. This is our position, you know, let them decide where they wanna go with it, but that's my take on it.
Okay, so Jason, are you comfortable with adding that into the letter?
Yeah. My take would be I will add it into the letter, and adjust accordingly, and I'll let you guys know it's here and
We'll just sign it, yeah.
come in and sign, so.
And once we sign it, I would get it posted as it is.
Yeah.
Altered, so that we can see it.
I wanna make sure I'm correct here. The motion is to say that we don't support it and add it to the letter, but we have not.
Opposed, we are opposed to it.
Yes, that we are opposed to the pipeline coming through town, and it's gonna be added to the letter, but that does not, we still have to act on the letter separately.
You're modifying the letter, so, I mean, you could,
Well, my
unless.
motion was sort of two-phase. It was send a letter and add this, with this addition to the letter. You can, if you wanna break it up, it's fine.
I just wanna make sure we're clear on how we're doing this.
Yep.
And it's also based on the other suggestion that we'll be sending it to our state reps and state senator as well.
Right.
Yes.
I'm
I'm
not sure.
okay with that.
You're okay with that?
Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
it's clearly that we're in opposition, and the letter is going out as suggested and modified.
I mean, I can say it for myself, and it's not because there's people in the room, and it's not because of anything. Haven't liked this idea since it's first come up, but we have an obligation to try to get the information and make sure we do right by the town.
Yeah, I
But
think,
one of the concerns I always had was, if you act too early, sometimes these companies, especially Kinder Morgan, when you research them online, they tend to shut down when they feel you're against them. So this is gonna be a fight,
It is anyway.
so.
yeah, it will be. I agree with you. I agree with what you said, because I've talked to several people who've asked me about it, and my response has been, I don't know enough about it, and we're not elected for our own interests.
Exactly.
We're elected for the community's interests in general, and if there was a benefit to the overall community, it would make sense to support it or do something like that. But I'm not seeing it. The more I hear about it, the more evidence that we see, it doesn't seem to benefit us at all. Now, we may not be able to stop it, but it doesn't benefit us. And, you know, people have asked, what can we do to stop it? I don't know. I mean, even the legal fees alone could be very expensive for this community to try to do, even if we got on board. But I think it's obvious we have to at least do something. This is the first step, and I think we're gonna be hearing about this going forward for a long time.
I agree, because unfortunately, we have nothing to gain by the way it's been proposed.
No.
We're just an obstacle in the way that they need to run their line through. So with nothing else said, I'll call this to a vote. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, all those abstain. Motion carries 3-0-0.
Zero. Because I would just make sure the minutes note that he's off, and when he comes back on, he comes back on. The he is from, so. If you're really ready to join
So
us.
Jason, is there anything else that we have or have to act on with this pipeline discussion?
Right now, I'm gonna say no. We may get a request again. I keep kicking the can down the road. At some point, the parcel of land that we own that is not constrained by the conservation requirements, we have not granted permission to Kinder Morgan to survey.
And I think we still don't give him permission.
Well, there's two. I would recommend actually that we actually do give them permission to survey the piece that we have that they have access that isn't constrained at all. That way you see what's there, you understand what the conditions are. I know that's the advice that Merrimack has given. It feels good to say no to them and say, no, you can't survey my land. The problem is ultimately you don't get all of the information in the dialogue, and so you're challenging it later. So I know that's the advice Merrimack's council gave Merrimack, was to let them survey that piece at least.
It's like an assessor.
Right.
You know, when you
Right.
let him in your house, he takes,
Would we be giving that same recommendation to the Conservation Commission, though?
What?
Because ultimately, the Conservation Commission has to give permission
No.
for their property, right?
No. The other property, nobody's giving permission right now, based on council's recommendation.
Okay.
So this would be the access to map 10, lot 60,
Was this town hall, okay.
which is town-owned land.
You need a motion to do that?
It wouldn't be bad, because the last motion you had was to
Not allow him.
not allow it, so.
so moved, Mr. Chairman,
I have a
to allow them to survey their property.
I have motion by Mr. Lemire to allow the survey of, you said 10, map 10 lot, Jason?
Map 10, lot 60.
Lot 60. Do I have a second?
I'll second it,
I have a second by Mr. Brunel.
as much as it doesn't make any sense.
Any discussion? I would agree with you too. I mean, that land is just, I don't know what they're gonna survey out there.
Where is it?
The 10.60, hold on a sec, let me, pull up.
Point is that since we're on the record as opposing it, it will serve, no negative purpose to let them survey. And then I think at least they can't say, well, you're being obstructionist. No, we just oppose it, but go ahead and survey it.
Yeah, and it doesn't,
It's no negative effect to the town. As long as there's no negative effect to the town, let them survey and see what comes out of it.
It is a piece that is accessed via a narrow right-of-way off of Nessenkeg. It's kind of tucked in behind a lot of the residential properties on Nessenkeg.
was that the
Could
property we were
give
gonna
us
do,
some
we were gonna build a
information
field,
that we
was that the
find
property we were doing a field in?
What?
Was that a property we were looking about doing a field at?
No.
Well, that's the other one thing that was off talent.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
All right, so I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? All those abstain? Motion carries 3-0-0. Anything else, Jason, on this project?
That's all I
Pipeline
need.
information?
I think, no, unless you have any questions on the many things that have been shared under the pipeline information. I guess I just would generally say anybody who's watching, if you are interested, you can sign up for our mailing list, which you can get to on the town's website. Our pipeline page is there as well. So,
Litchfieldnh.gov/pipeline.
I'd just like to thank the residents for sharing their opinion in a constructive manner. I think it serves us all good to have that done that way. Thank you.
I would agree completely, and I also want to thank everybody that's sent letters into the Board of Selectmen, because just so you know, they're not just blank pages. I've read every one of them. And I will continue to read them as they come through, because even if it's just a rant, that's what we're here for. So if you have,
We need a contest for who's the best letter writer.
some of them are lengthy.
Oh, I got it, sure. Jason, why did they say that, like, there was a newspaper article that, Kinder Morgan had gotten all their funding from the different utility companies for this? I know I read that article.
They had, I think what you saw, and again, the information kind of comes fast and furious. There's a threshold level. There's a threshold level that they need to get to say this project is like initially viable.
Right.
And so that's what they've been promoting. But that project being initially viable is a little bit for Liberty, and a lot of it were the Massachusetts utilities. If you look at the, I know their last newsletter they sent, which I know went out just earlier this week, if on the mailing list, there was a reference to it in there. So.
Okay. So, since we have now ended discussion about the pipeline, I would like to welcome Mr. Byron back to his seat if he so chooses.
If he chooses to come back, you're not gonna stay?
And if not, we will move on. Thank you for coming, everyone. Feel free to come in any Monday night at 6:30 that we have a meeting.
Are you gonna talk about the pipeline again?
I'm sure
not tonight.
we
Oh,
generally
not
have a
tonight, but
discussion
yeah.
about it every meeting,
Every meeting? Okay.
of any new information that comes through.
Thank you very much.
So now we will move on to the agenda. That states we will talk planning board impact fee update.
Woohoo!
I don't see it on the agenda.
It's on there.
Nice try.
Go ahead, Russ.
It's in bold, no less.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I believe you received the packet of the impact fees.
Yes, we did. All 80 some odd pages of it.
That we've gone through about 20 times. Basically, everything is up to date with Bruce Mabry. The biggest thing was that we changed the way it's formulated, that instead of having two separate impact fees, everything is tied into one. Makes it a lot neater for everybody, a lot easier to read. There's not too much I could tell you about it. The figures are there. And basically, if you have any questions on it, for us.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions?
Is, okay.
Oh, yeah.
Is Mayberry all done now with the report? He's completed it, everything, so?
He's finished.
Yes.
Yeah, he's completed all the work.
Unless he plans to work for free for anything else. I think we got the final bill, so.
So last time, I think we had adopted this and we had adopted, I forget what it was first, the schools. It could be something
We
different first.
adopted the schools first and then the
Right.
rest of it, yep.
And now we're going on to the municipal stuff. So is this, per your discussion, Tom, all been integrated together to,
Everything is all together, yep.
okay.
There's a, I don't know if you have this document or not. It shows the new layout.
We have the 82-page report.
For the 82-page report, and what I was referring to was the executive
The
summary. for
new
the-
layout of the
Layout.
ordinance,
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that was baked in here. I know I've shared that previously.
Yeah, but I mean, Jason can give it, it basically shows what we did to the ordinance. What we got rid of and what we condensed together and merged in.
That was the result of town meeting vote, right?
Right.
So
was
that
the result of
that
town
was,
meeting
we
vote.
had,
Town
Yeah.
meeting, yeah, under the zoning ordinances, it was two separate sections, and now.
Right,
it's
now
just
it's all
eliminated.
back into
I
one,
understand that.
Yeah, that's basically, that's the main part of what we did. Bruce came up with all the figures for the new systems. The only one I think we had any major discussion was the rec.
Right.
Because it was so broad, and we took the one that we felt best suited the town at this time.
So, do you have any numbers off the top of your head that, I'll call it a $250,000 home would be assessed? How much in an impact fees?
I didn't do it out.
You know,
But I have, you have the fee schedule,
right.
so.
And it's not based on valuation, unfortunately, it's based on
Square footage.
square foot.
Right, no, I
So,
understand.
yeah.
That was the other thing we did, went to the square footage, which is a
No,
lot
I'm just trying to
easier.
get a rough comparator, because it used to be somewhere in the neighborhood of $11,000 for about a
I think it basically stays,
$250,000 home, and I was trying to figure out what it would be now.
Value fluctuates year over year
Yeah, but
based
it-
on the variables,
yeah,
but
I don't believe it changed too much, Frank.
Okay.
trying to streamline the wording of the ordinance and not really affect the potential for revenue generation by the ordinance.
You don't want to really say that.
I don't want to say it like that, but that's the gist of what we've done. We didn't want to harm the town's position while also not not make it
I
more
understand.
difficult.
Okay.
Stop digging.
Mr. Lemay would like to speak.
Just a quick question, has there been any analysis done as to the change as to what's currently in the book versus what will be in place?
That's what Bruce Mayberry did, was tasked to do.
Okay,
And then we went with his recommendations, plus we took 5 or 6 towns in the area and compared them all to make sure that nothing was really out of range.
in the aggregate,
Yep.
is the effect higher or about the same?
It's about the same.
Okay,
It's basically.
That's
the
what
ma-
I was
yeah,
getting
yeah,
I
the
just
main thing-
wanted it on the record.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say, but fumbled with the words.
Because your school attendance is
It's
going
down on
down,
page 16, I
Sure,
think.
and
so,
everywhere.
yep.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Is there any further comment? So, I take it that this did go through council? That she reviewed it and all that? And that we now have an impact fee ordinance that will stand up in court?
Yeah, well, the impact fee ordinance that was voted on at town meeting, that's already in place. Really, all you guys have now is.
Just making
yeah.
sure that everybody gets that.
Yeah, that stands up now. Basically, now that with that enables you, now you have the chart of the current fees, which is what this is.
And if you haven't saw me, you can read the 81 pages.
Right, no, I mean, I went through a lot of them, and
Yep.
it's one of those things that I felt like I was reading the same thing over and over and over, because it's a justification for it all. And, wow.
Well, see, that's what we, don't forget now, last year, you would have done that twice.
Right.
That's the main
Because they
thing,
were
we gotta
separate.
get it all combined into one.
Yep.
So you don't have to go through it twice.
Does anybody from the board have any further questions for these gentlemen?
Thank you for all the work.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
I will say that it is been a grind. So, yes, thank you very much, guys, for pulling this through and getting it done. I know what it took.
You know, you started out with it.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So now, moving on our agenda,
Hold on, before you move on the agenda, will you be, adopting the impact fee reports and the impact fee schedules as provided?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that the Board of Selectmen for the town of Litchfield adopt the proposed impact fee structure as documented in the memo of March 4th, 2015, to the Board of Selectmen from the Litchfield Planning Board.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Byron, and I have a second by Mr. Lemire. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, call this to a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, all those abstain. Motion carries 4-0-0. Excellent. So now we're all set, Jason?
I think that was methodology and fees on the memo, Frank?
Of course.
Okay,
You betcha.
If you didn't hear me say it, it's because I was mumbling at that point.
okay. There's a distance between us. Sometimes I don't hear very well.
Okay, so
That's an
now,
understatement.
Oh,
Huh?
boy. No, yeah.
Maybe in addition to your eyesight, you probably should get ears checked.
Wow. Wow.
It's a tough tonight.
if we can
Get-
attribute it to distance,
Yeah.
we will move forward. Administrator report, Jason.
Ah,
Talk about some old stuff.
Let's see, what do we have here? Where am I starting? Okay. DES review of Dara Pond water levels. You may recall there's been some conversation about the apparent decline in water levels in Dara Pond and residents engaging Hudson, New Hampshire DES, Governor's Office, and others on this. Probably like 2 months ago or so, I shared a letter back that we were copied on from the Governor's Office saying that they would be directing DES to work with everyone to do a regional water supply review. So this is, the letter that's attached here is finally the follow-up that they are asking that DES is looking to partner with the Town of Hudson, Town of Litchfield, and Pennachuck Waterworks to assess the opportunities to manage existing and future regional water supply issues. So, I expect that this will be looking at Hudson's use of the wells and the impact on the pond, our use of groundwater wells to maintain our fields, and possibilities that Pennachuck may have about providing additional water from other sources into town. So, what I know is in that letter, I know nothing more than that so far, and nothing has been scheduled as a meeting.
The part that confused me about that is that they're concerned about the irrigation of the fields
Of course they are.
and how much water that's using. When it's, I don't know, without too much of a stretch, 1/1000th of what's being pumped out of there daily.
We are the lowest hanging regulatory fruit. So, it is easier for DES to require and compel information, tracking, and activity from us than it is the others. So the fact that we're a party to it, I mean, and part of that, to be fair, just is those wells were added and there's never sort of any tracking and reporting to DES, which we now are obligated to start doing. So, the slightly cynical view is we're the easiest target, so they'll start with us.
The well that you're referring to was which well? The one in back of the high school, or the one over by Ren?
But I think both right now.
Okay.
Both.
Is,
Because weren't they concerned about the field up here, Sawmill?
Not as part of this. I mean, they've been concerned about us watering the high school as well as watering the rec fields right next to the pond.
I was involved in this whole thing back in 2002, 2003 timeframe, and I do know that they want to look at the school use of water for their fields and stuff like that. They seem to have a big issue of it, and I think that issue is driven, to be honest with you, by Pennachuck. Because, as Jason said, that's an easy mark. There was a discussion back in 2003 that Pennachuck tried to have with the Board of Selectmen, that they wanted the Board of Selectmen to put a water ban on and all types of fun stuff. And even on private wells, which I found fascinating. I think the only other thing is, I'd like to make a point on, is that if we're worried about that aquifer, because that aquifer supplies the town of Hudson, you may want to take a look at what crosses or is proposed to cross through that aquifer, and that if that aquifer becomes contaminated with, I don't know, say, natural gas, as an example, you'd shut down basically two towns' water supply, Litchfield and Hudson. So you may want to consider that when they're having these discussions, that's all.
Okay. Anything else? I guess we'll move on to the January storm.
Just short and sweet, the president has approved the disaster declaration for the January snowstorm of the 48-hour period, January 26th to January 28th. Briefing from state and FEMA kicks off, which was yesterday not yesterday, today and tomorrow. So given the schedule constraints that are there, our local Department of Safety rep is dropping by to see me with the initial paperwork. I'm convinced that this has not changed substantially in the many years that I've done these, so. Practically, we completed a lot of it earlier, and they're trying to qualify the storm for disaster declaration, so stay tuned. Should be a pretty quick turnaround once I get a FEMA person connected, so, but we are moving on that. Cable operators conversion, another fun activity. As I mentioned last month, based on an anonymous complaint received by Department of Labor, the Cable Committee's practice of considering operators as contractors was determined to be inconsistent with labor law. So I immediately worked with Dick Pentheny as chair of the Cable Committee to adjust the relationship. So the operators were part-time employees and paid weekly through payroll. We worked out the logistics of collection, distribution of timesheets, and as of the week of March 23rd, all cable operators have been paid as part-time employees. Attached to the letter from Department of Labor, it showed their violations and proposed penalty. Based on the way they calculated the penalty, their proposed fine would have been $4,800. I attended an informal conference with Department of Labor Administrator, that should say April 7th. Let's do that. That was last week. Fine was reduced to $2,600, $100 plus $2,500 for the general violation. It was portrayed to me that the $2,500 was the minimum fine. I said that I still felt that was steep we came into compliance. I mean, I'm not denying that it was there, but we did everything as quickly as possible, even before we got their decision. And again, was told it was the minimum fine. Upon reviewing the law, as I was starting to type this up, the section reads, if the commissioner finds the employer has misrepresented the relationship between the employer and person providing services, the commissioner may assess a civil penalty of up to $2,500. In addition, such employer may be assessed a civil penalty of $100 per employee for each day of noncompliance. So, the next step would be a formal hearing. Based on that disconnect between the portrayal of a minimum when I asked for further relief, as well as an overall scale of the fine relative to involved wages for a year, almost a full year's of payment to cable operators, I'm inclined to pursue the formal hearing. I spoke with Laura, who also recommended the proceeding. I'm inclined to work briefly with her on this. Obviously, there's a balance there. It does no good to challenge this Department of Labor fine and pay roughly the equivalent in legal fees.
Why not?
Why? Well, because I achieve a moral victory, but I pay the net effect to the town is the same.
You're gonna pay it anyway, and the fact that they're saying they're assessing something that they shouldn't be, somebody's got to challenge it, and if we're gonna pay it out anyway, I'd much rather take the chance that maybe we won't pay that amount, get injunctive relief, or legal relief, and hopefully it won't happen to the next time. I mean, if we gotta pay it anyway, I would like to pursue it.
I'm just confused as to why we were paying them as contractors, because they took the job as contractors. They knew the job was a 1099 job, not a W-2, W-4 job. And we're still at fault here? That's what I see with the labor law,
We are at fault because of the way that the independent contractor versus part-time employee is defined. Independent contractor sets him or herself out as their own business and controls their time and
Right.
deliverables. In the case of a cable operator, they don't control the time of their work. A cable operator cannot.
Yes, they do. They can choose not to do it.
They can choose not to do it, but that is a different approach. They choose, the Department of Labor chooses to see, hey, that's on a schedule, you're following that time. They can't cover the Selectmen's meeting at 9 a.m. on Tuesday morning. And so that
It's like a
was,
schedule.
No, I get it.
Yeah.
Whatever.
And
Right.
several
I just found
towns
it
are going through this now, and the thing is, this was changed recently. It hasn't been, too long that this has been changed. When we first started out doing this, we were okay with it years ago. But the Labor Department, I guess, through, I believe it was administrative regulation, changed, and clarified it.
Do the employees get a benefit for being a part-time employee versus being a private contractor?
arguably, yes. The legal rationale for it is that they are clearly covered under workman's comp as an employee, whereas a contractor, they're not. That is generally, in the rest of business and industry, the motivation for this is to ensure that people are covered from workplace injuries.
But we can choose to still cover them through even the 1099 though, right? I mean, our insurance will cover them if they get hurt.
They would be covered, they'd be covered under property liability insurance, but not necessarily workers' comp insurance. So.
Workers' comp, you gotta be an employee.
Yeah, that's really what's driving this. If you actually go through and read the attachment, it is a workers' comp driven law, so. So I guess, I mean, I wanted to bring you up to speed. Unless you are opposed, it's my intention to go to the formal hearing and continue to argue with a sense that I, am certainly not going to exceed paying in legal fees what we would otherwise pay in a fine.
You need a motion?
Do you need a motion for that?
Can't help, I mean, it can't hurt, sorry.
So, Chairman, I'd like to move that we board authorize the town administrator to work with town council in proceeding with action to clarify or to appeal the action of the Department of Labor relative to our fine.
I have a motion by Mr. Lemire. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Lemire, seconded by Mr. Byron. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, call this to a vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All those abstain. Motion carries 4-0-0.
Now, does Jason have a conflict of interest because he's a town employee?
Hey.
I don't believe so.
I was really happy when this first came out, now bear in mind, that meeting in Concord, I drive to Concord, I spend 10 minutes and I come back. But, I was pleased that I thought I had saved us $2,300 until I then read the rest and the law and realized that it cost us
You didn't save us any money at all.
What?
You didn't save us any money.
You
It's
cost
still costing us $500.
Killing me. Killing me. So, all right.
Okay. Next, you have,
I have just a couple scattered items here. Under informational items, since there was a long list of things, I just wanted to tell you that under the stormwater permit, end of last month attended National Regional Stormwater Coalition meeting. In the ongoing saga of a potentially revised EPA permit, the latest expectation is that it would be released in June with an effective date of December, with our first submission due by March of 2016.
Let me play this back.
Yeah.
I want to go back 1 year. This will be released in June with 2015 implementation.
Hey, look, all I can do is say what they tell me. The problem is at some point it will happen, and then at some point our costs will go up because we will have a lot of paper planning and reporting to do initially to get into that. So, bear in mind we're in our, 8th year of our 3-year plan or something like that. So, you know. So anyway, I wanted to let you know that's out there. We're still meeting and paying attention to that. Friday, a contingent of us, this past Friday, went up to the police academy graduation. Officer Lang has graduated on Friday, and she is now on board, and she was on duty today. I had suggested that if it was lower key in town, that she should stop by and say hello. My understanding is that they've
Been very busy.
They've been very busy tonight because over there, so.
Is that generally shared? Like, I mean, when you find those things out, can you share it with us?
Yeah, I did. I tried passing that along. Yeah.
Because now some of us can go.
That's true. I think I posted it so long ago that I think when I first posted it, you couldn't go.
Oh.
and so you probably didn't double back to it.
Okay.
So, but yeah. And the other item I wanted to, it is time again to do the annual policies to review segment, which I know Selectman Byron, this is the thing he looks forward to all year. To that end, you'll see that I've posted a few that I'd like to go through at our next meeting. Background, cash receipts, conference and meeting, credit card, financial reconciliation.
Can you are those hung and drive? So
Yeah, they are.
We can go through them and comment on them, and I can give you something to do.
I have no shortage of things to do. However, yes, they are all there. If you go to the site, if you just click on the
Is there a policy review folder, is what it is?
not,
There's a policy
actually there is an ad policy review folder. So I'll reshare that. This is all here too. I can also send a link out
I'm
to
just
that
looking to
folder.
get it in one spot so I can. So.
Yeah,
I would just reshare out the policy folder.
yeah, that's probably the easiest way. So,
And turn on commenting.
what?
Turn on commenting.
It's on.
Is it on all the time?
In Google, it's on all the time. I think the only other thing I'd say is auditors are here today and tomorrow. First day was very smooth and very positive and no significant issues.
There's always tomorrow.
There's always tomorrow. Thanks.
I'll give Frank Byron a call.
Yeah, Frank's not doing it. So, did anybody have any other questions under any of the other informational items I had posted? It's been a little while since we've met, so. Okay.
Oh, apparently not. So, next thing we'll do is we'll move on to selectmen reports. Are there any selectmen reports?
The Budget Committee had its first meeting. Elected chairman of the Budget Committee was Cindy Couture, and vice chair was Carrie Douglas. And the only other thing I'll report is Sunday, I attended the Eagle Scout ceremony for Lawrence Smith III, who received his Eagle Award and presented on behalf of the Board of Selectmen the certificate for recognition of his attainment of that rank.
Thank you. Any other reports?
Only that I'm found out today I'm going to be probably missing a couple of meetings upcoming. I'm going to be immobile for a little lower extremity correction. So. No, it's not from the neck up.
Oh.
So I'm not exactly sure, but I will let you know what meetings.
I didn't know if you needed a reboot or something.
I always need a reboot. So it'll be at least 2 upcoming meetings.
Okay.
I will let you know. I will stay in touch also. Email, I'll need things to do.
Perfect. Myself, I attended the planning board meeting last week, and topics of discussion were, they did bring up, it was tabled temporarily until further review, a vote on the pipeline, so the planning board was planning on we stand in one direction or another there. And the other thing that was talked about was moving forward on redoing the master plan. So there was some discussion going both ways as to whether it needed to be a complete rewrite or a modification. And I believe at this time we felt it was gonna need a modification, but that was about it. That's what I have. Anybody else? Okay, we have no items moved from consent. We have no items for other business unless somebody has something.
There are two things, yeah. An update, if Jason can give that to us, of where we stand on the Agricultural Commission.
We stand that it was approved at town meeting.
No, I mean.
Right, I mean,
we were searching for members. and
right,
stuff like
right, yeah, I haven't done a large outreach effort yet, so.
that. Okay. And I have a motion to make, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that the Board of Selectmen hereby extends the contract of Chief Freitzel until the May 1, 2015.
I have a motion by
We've already
Mr.
sent it to April 30th.
Can I ask what, you're extending it 2 days? The board's already extended it to April 30?
Okay, never mind. I just wanted to make sure.
Yep.
I'll withdraw my motion.
Okay, it's withdrawn. Anything else as other business from anyone? Hearing none. The next item we have is to go into non-public session per RSA 91A 3, colon 2A, compensation.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Motion. We'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Lemire?
Yes.
Mr. Brunel?
Yes.
Mr. Byron?
Yes.
Mr. Perry, yes. So, that's, with that said, the only other item that we have to do after that is to adjourn. So what we will do is, go into non-public session and say good night for the evening. So, thank you all for watching. Have a good night.